This is the Local Real Estate Developer Podcast, where we share the stories of locals across the country who took that empty lot or that old building and turned it into something awesome that their community needs. I'm Kristi Kandel, and I've been a real estate developer my entire career. My co-host Raphael is a commercial broker, and together we're sharing the stories of locals making a huge impact on their communities. And what we've learned is you don't need millions in the bank or decades of experience to get started. You just need the confidence, tools, and the right people around you. This podcast is your chance to gain the confidence to get in the game, because real estate development isn't just for the insiders anymore. It's for people like you too.
Welcome to the Local Real Estate Developers Podcast. I'm your co-host, Raphael, and I'm here with my co-host, Kristi. We're excited to have another great episode today. So, Kristi, great to see you as always.
Yeah, great to see you. So I'm Kristi Kandel. I am a real estate developer, investor, and I teach locals how to become developers in their own community. And today we have a story to share with someone who is also in Florida, just up in the Tampa Bay area. And when I first found him, we typically we'll be scrolling through Instagram and we'll see someone who's doing something related to development, and immediately our eyes light up and go, "Ooh, yay, who's this? What's their story?" And I remember when we had our initial call that I was just like, "Oh, okay, this is a good one. This was supposed to be a flip with a great partner turned into a whole redevelopment project. This is a great story to share." Because actually earlier today, I was recording a different podcast, and she had a very similar story where they thought they were going to flip a property and it turned into a whole new construction thing. So with that being said, we have Chris King on today. How you doing?
I'm doing good. How are you guys?
Not too bad. Not too bad. It's a little rainy down here, so it's a great day to record, right?
Yeah. Hurricane season just started.
We don't say those words.
Well, we're excited to hear about your story because, to your point, sometimes, some of the best stories come from situations where you have a thing that you think you're going to do and all of a sudden it turns into something else and it ends up working differently than what you initially expected. But obviously, things happen for a reason. So, obviously we kind of wanted to give you an opportunity to tell us a little bit about yourself, and then maybe we can highlight, the project that Kristi was alluding to a little bit earlier. So.
Yeah, of course. So, like Christy said, my name is Chris King. I'm originally from Tampa, Florida. I moved out to Pensacola, Florida for college. I played sports my whole life and I was looking to play basketball. I actually committed to play basketball at Warner University, and then I ended up transferring to University of West Florida, which is out in Pensacola. I got introduced into real estate in general just via my mom. Like we just used to talk about it. It was kind of like a dream that she had, and we would talk about it. And I actually got licensed as a realtor my junior year of college. I got licensed as a realtor, and I started selling my senior year. So that's the first year I was in production.
Senior year of high
And
school?
no, college.
College. Okay.
So I got licensed my junior year of college in Pensacola, and I started selling, like I was in production my senior year of college. So I started making some money and learning a little bit about real estate in general and business. And I knew that one of the biggest things was I never really understood the difference between, like, I feel like that's super common now that I'm saying it out loud. It's like you should know that going into it, but the difference between a realtor and like an investor kind of deal. I was younger, so I didn't really understand the concept. I just knew like real estate is like where you're supposed to make a bunch of money at. So as I was starting to make money, I was like, well, I want to buy a house. I want to flip it. It looks really cool. Make something old, and rehab it and bring it back to life. So I got into this project in downtown Pensacola. It was a cool little deal. It was nice. The location was the best thing. I actually found the deal on the MLS. So it was located. I mean, you could walk downtown, but it was in a historical district. And so what I did was I had a partner of mine. He was a longtime friend, still is. He was actually my basketball coach growing up, and he was looking to get into real estate. So I sent him the deal over, and we were kind of like actively looking at other deals, and we used the hard money loan to finance everything, and we bought the property with the intentions. It was a 3-1, probably around 1100 square feet, 1,100 and some change square feet, and then we bought it as a 3-1. And we originally were just going to like renovate it. It was a house built in like 1908, super old. It wasn't the best taken care of, but great location. So we were just gonna renovate it.
But yeah, I have a question. So you got your license to be an agent. You started doing that junior year, senior year. What was that switch that flipped that you went, if I want to make the generational wealth or the real money, that's where the investor side comes in. And then how did you pick which way you would go with it?
Yeah, so as I was getting more into like the realtor side of things, like I started understanding like, I mean, if I'm wanting to make money consistently, I'm gonna have to continue selling. Like as I'm spending money, I'm gonna have to like make more sales. So just kind of really diving in and leaning into that and getting better at that and understanding like how it works was more so like, oh, this is, I mean, I don't want to call it a job, but like a job or a business, like this is something I'm gonna have to like maintain. That wasn't my original thought process. So, I mean, I believe getting involved in real estate in the first place, my goal was always to be like an investor, generational wealth, cash flow. I think that's kind of like everyone's idea. I think getting your license is just like the easiest step. The first, it's out there. That's what everyone thinks about when they think about real estate. So that was the route that I took. And the further along I got in that path, the more I understood like the difference. It was like, well, if I can make money over here, like then I can kind of segue into being an investor. And it's just two different worlds. I mean, you guys understand it.
Yeah. Yeah. And to your point, that's how a lot of people get into the business to begin with, is to get your license. And as you start to learn a little bit more, you decide, hey, I can do this for the projects that I ultimately want to invest in, and you kind of go from there. So what was that transition point for you? Were you operating as a realtor for a real estate agent for a period of time before you invested in your first deal? Like, kind of talk us through that progression.
Hey, can we chat for a second? Since you're listening to this podcast, you're already thinking like a developer. You see the potential in your community, and you're ready to do more than just watch from the sidelines. That's exactly why we created the Local Developer Vault. It's a free resource full of tools, templates, and trainings to help you take action. And here's the best part. When you sign up, you'll also get access to our local real estate developer community. It's full of people just like you, who are making real things happen in their neighborhoods. So don't just listen to the stories. Become the next one that we spotlight on our show. The link in the show notes to unlock the vault and join our movement.
I would say, honestly, the direct turning point when I decided to buy that first property was I sold my biggest deal as a realtor. So it was a $1.3 million deal on the VAR beach,
Heck
and
yeah.
I got a really big commission check. And I was like, I actually set the team record. I think that it's been broken since then, but at the time I was on a team, like a realtor team, and I think I set the team record. So like everyone was hyping me up, and I was like, yeah, like I'm just gonna go buy a house now and see where this goes, and like kind of do like real estate on the side because I had extra funds. So I think that was kind of the transition. I always had the mentality of like I wanted to flip houses. That was always the goal, but after that transaction, I had like the excess funds to go and do it. So that took me about a year. That was within my first year. And then my second year, I was still selling. I just wasn't actively as involved.
Like sourcing business. You weren't actively sourcing business for yourself.
Exactly. And I started learning a little bit more about wholesaling and off market real estate and just more so just diving into like the investor side of things. So yeah, I'd say actively for maybe a year and a half.
That's awesome. So you make that transition, you make a big sale, and you have a opportunity to generate some funds, and now you start taking on what you want to do. And originally was to start flipping houses and generating income that way. Tell us a little bit about the first couple projects there, and then Kristi, we were alluding to a project where it became kind of a mixed use project. Is that one that you were referring to?
It became a whole redevelopment of the property. So
Yeah. So
maybe
and that was that your first deal, or was that a little bit down the road where you had a couple of different opportunities?
This was actually my very first deal, so
There you
that made
go.
it even
You started
more
off big.
intense.
Heck yeah.
Exactly, yeah. I kind of got all the lessons at once. You know what I
That's
mean?
great.
Yeah, I mean, at the time it wasn't great, but
No,
now looking
I
back,
know. It's hindsight. I was always 2020, but there's times where I last year with a business partner of mine, we bought a couple of buildings, and in December, I'm in brokerage too, and you know how it is where commissions are sporadic. So December, January, I was sweating bullets. I was just like,
Yeah,
geez,
yeah.
pretty
That's
low.
how.
And
That's how.
you got stuff in the pipeline, but it hasn't closed yet. And you're like,
Yeah,
all these
yeah.
expenses. So
Yeah, it's
it's
like, do
part
I
of it.
count
Part
this?
of it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
So
yeah, please explain that because obviously I'd love to talk a little bit more about the nuances, what attracted you to the deal, and then when you went through that process, talk to us a little bit about how you were able to overcome some of those obstacles.
yeah, so I guess what attracted me to that deal specifically, we bought it for 90,000, which was a good price. I mean, like I said, it was on market. It wasn't necessarily like now that I understand the numbers a little bit better and I understand like just like I'm an actual investor now, so it wasn't necessarily like a killer deal price wise. It was good. Like I don't know if it would have necessarily if we would have gone about it correctly, we would have made money, but I don't necessarily know if like it would have hit like the correct margins that like I use now to like structure my deals. But yeah, it was good. It was on the MLS. We actually it was, I believe they were doing a novation. It was like I'm pretty sure they were wholesalers and they listed it on the MLS and they were trying to get it off that way. We walked the property. I actually got to meet the owner a couple of times and we connected and there wasn't too much of like an understanding for numbers. I mean, obviously we ran numbers. I had a couple of like my mentors at the time walk it with me. I got some quotes from some contractors. So we were expected to put about 75K into it was the original plan. And that was like with some like overage charges. But yeah, we ended up over double that. So yeah, the
At what
project.
point, so you said you went in with a partner and that was one of your prior basketball coaches? Okay. And then what was the draw? So partnerships are a huge part of real estate and development, and we don't always win at the partnerships that we do. So and we all go through this, but some are great. So how did you go about finding this, like, and saying, "Hey, let's do this partnership. I know you because you were my coach." What were they doing that had them interested in real estate? Where were your goals aligned at the time that drew you guys together?
Yeah, so at the time he was doing trucking, dispatching for like trucking. So he actually owned a company. He owns a company, a valet company as well. And at the time he was doing like trucking dispatching. So he had extra capital that he was just looking to deploy. And in the beginning stages, right, like the concept is like you know, I have extra money. Like ideally, I can just deploy that money out and it'll go like multiply and then it'll come back to me, right? But then like as me and him like started getting into things, like you have to have a baseline understanding. You need to be actively involved in like the markets and understand what's going on. Like there's skills, like you need to pick the correct people, like the network time frame. Like there, you can't just like throw money at it and necessarily expect it to work out. But our original draw to like us getting into a partnership was like I was already in real estate. He was already making money. So it was like, well, he wants to have the money, the excess money that he's making, make more money. So let's go into a partnership and let's develop something here that'll be substantial. So that was the introduction. Obviously, he was like one of my mentors growing up. So there was already that he already know, loved, and trust me from that aspect of things. So it was a little bit easier for us to get in the business together and navigate that.
Yeah, and that's very common for the way that the first partnerships or the first employees you hire or the first how things go down. It's who do we know, who do we like, and yeah, let's go try a thing and see what happens. So at this point, you've identified the property. Your goal is to make it a flip. We know it didn't happen as is. So what were some of the nuances that got it to the point where the business decision was made of, hey, maybe let's do something else?
So once we identify the property and we're like, yeah, this is the one. We understand like how we're breaking up like money. We understand the goals. We understand like our profit margins. Like ideally, how much money we're gonna put into it. We still took into account that this was like our first project, so we wanted to take heed of that and get someone else involved that could also like give us the guidance. Like now I understand. I mean, you would just kind of go for like a general contractor in a way if you would that would be the perfect situation. But what we did was we brought on a third investor, and his role in the project was to make sure we don't hit any like $50,000 mistakes, any huge issues, right? So like just kind of give us guidance and make sure that we get this one done and we can get this one under our belt, and we'll make a little bit of less money, but we'll have the knowledge and we'll be able to just kind of like go forward without hitting any huge road bumps.
Pay for the experience, avoid the death blows, know you're going to take a little bit less, but what you're going to learn will propel you into your future. Yeah, yeah.
Exactly, exactly. So we went into a joint venture with a third investor, and now we're splitting. The goal was to like split profits three ways, and his value that he was bringing to the table was experience, connections, and essentially getting the project done. And so one of the things that he presented to us was, let's. This is in a good location. It's a great property. So let's turn this into a 4 bedroom, 2.5 bath. So we're gonna add probably about 500 square feet to the property and add a bedroom and add 1.5 baths to it. Which, when the numbers are in front of you, it's like, oh yeah, that triples profit margins. Like, yeah, that sounds like a great idea. And like, oh, we're only gonna have to spend, a little bit more money, but yeah, why not? If we don't, and trusting that he like would navigate the whole thing, on paper it looks very, very, at the time, definitely looked very enticing, because I didn't necessarily understand like what came with that. So as you guys know, as we started that process, now we're dealing with architects, we're dealing with engineers, we have to get permitting for the additional square footage. So now we're dealing with the city, we're dealing with just a lot more red tape than the original $75,000 was included. So
As
that's kind of,
Yeah, as you're navigating through that and you've got a partner with experience, is that partner leading the charge with the city, with the contractors, with the architects? Are you guys like following along and watching what's happening? How are the roles split at that point?
yeah. So the partner that we JV'd with, he was leading everything. So at this point, we're still in meetings and we're still actively involved in the project. So like we're still there. I mean, even physically doing some work, at times. But yeah, he's leading everything, and we're kind of like following his lead, but like still listening and like keeping like our hands on everything. So as we started like doing things like meeting with the architect and the engineers and things, I mean, that's higher level real estate. You know what I mean? Like that's not, at the time I didn't understand it, because again, this was my first project, but understanding how to like navigate plans and the process of getting the plans approved and negotiating and discussing with like engineers and doing that. And at the time I was 24, 25, maybe, like as we got a little bit deeper into the project. Now I'm 28. So, and I still have my license as a realtor. So everything's like 100 commission. Like you eat what you kill. So at this point, it's starting to become like a lot, and there's just a little bit more like pressure as far as like getting things done. So then at a certain point, because like I said, we're keeping our hands involved. At a certain point, we started like noticing mistakes that we could have avoided, or things, are starting to like cost more, and uh, even though he's guiding the project and he's involved, we're the ones spending the money at the end of the day, right? So we're uh we're a little bit more like, what's
Cost
the word that
conscious.
I'm looking?
You're cost
Yeah, yeah,
conscious.
yeah, right. Like let's make sure this is what we need to be doing. After like a couple of mistakes, you're kind of like, okay, hold up, let's be a little bit more careful and like navigate this with like intention. But the first mistake that happened, that was like a pretty big blow, was, so I guess let me go back a second. So again, we bought this property with a hard money loan, right? And the intention was a $70,000 like cosmetic, almost rehab.
Mhm.
So at this point, we've probably had the property for about a year, and this is turned into, we're adding additional square footage, or we're dealing with engineers, things like that. So we had to redo the foundations. We ripped off the back of the house, and we had to redo the house. Sat on pilings. It was a super super old house, and we had to redo like the foundation, pour like new rebar, new concrete, new block, everything. And doing the foundation, essentially, without going into like a 30 minute spiel about that, but the foundation was done incorrectly, and we had to get them to come back out there to redo and do it correctly to where the city would give us our permit for this portion of the project. And it ended up costing us an additional like $15,000. And we had a real at that point we had a real sit down uh, discussion with the person that we were JVing with, and like the whole point of bringing you into the project was to avoid these type of mistakes, right?
Mhm.
Another thing to take into consideration, I mean, at this point, like I said, the project, we're a year in, extended the hard money loan. We kind of got like all our money in the project. So the only way out is kind of to finish the
True.
project, unless you want to take like a huge hit. So, and again, like I'm probably 25 at this point, like trying to navigate this entire project. So another thing that I was overcoming, but I feel like I have a better understanding now, but I still struggle with it, is being younger in that community. I mean, we all have to deal with contractors, and they're usually like a certain type of person. You just need to understand how to navigate them, right? In order for you to get like what you want done, right? Like things like making sure like you're giving draws, right? You want to keep them motivated, but you don't want to give them all the money up front because you want them to show up to work, or like managing their time frames, things like that. You don't really want to delegate to other people. So being younger and navigating like grown men in that aspect was definitely something that I didn't foresee would be an issue, but was a skill that I had to like really niche down on, because
100%. When I started my career and I was in managing development projects and out in California, and I would be working with superintendents and construction project managers who are 20 and 30 years older than me. And they've got all this experience. They are superintendents and the guys managing the jobs because they have that. But at the same time, as the developer and as the owner, it's your money. No one cares about it as much as you. And there is that dance and that balance of making sure that they respect you, but also are able to listen and that they know it's a partnership. And it is a more difficult dynamic to balance when you are younger. But the skills and lessons you learn from that help a lot.
Oh
yeah,
yeah. Yeah. No,
yeah,
I would agree with Kristi too. I mean, we have a project here we're working on right now, and we had to go through the rezoning process. In order to do that, we have to engage with architects and engineers and all these other people to be able to present a plan to the city. And we had a similar type of issue with our architect because we had a contract for what we said we needed done, and we signed it, and everyone was in agreement that this is the scope of work, this is what the cost is going to be, and we met that cost. But apparently they thought, well, we have other things. They started working on other things that were outside the scope of work. And at the end, they sent us a bill for another, I think it was $8,000. And they sent us another $8,000 bill. And we're like, what the hell is this $8,000 bill? And they're like, well,
exactly.
we did some of this other work and stuff. And I said, well, we didn't agree to that. And he's like, well, you didn't tell us to stop. And it's like, what type
Yeah,
of logic,
exactly.
what type of logic is this? And it's stuff like that where you just don't even think about it because, to your point, you don't necessarily have that experience. So had I known that, because at the time I was receiving a bunch of stuff from this architect that were like these 3D renderings and stuff like that. And I was like, okay, cool. Like this is just maybe, something nice that they're doing, or maybe trying to help us visualize some stuff. But they were charging us this whole time. And
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
had I really thought about it and said, okay, let me go back to the scope of work and look at it and say, oh, like, I want to make this clear before we start moving down this road. Like, you're not charging us for this, are you? Because this is the scope of work. I didn't do that. So now it comes up where we have this conflict with our contractor, and we had to negotiate, and we ultimately came to an agreement, but we paid more than what we expected. But that's because we just didn't have that experience. And now, and it's going to help you immensely as you go forward in different projects. So, yeah. So kind of to that point, so you have a partner that you're working with. There has been some issues. You're trying to address them with this person because, again, no one's perfect. But then again, it's your money on the line. So how did that relationship progress? Were you guys able to overcome the hurdles, or was there a parting of ways, or how did that all play out?
So at this point, that first mistake that was made, it was more so like, hey, like we need you to kind of like understand that this was a mistake that could have been avoided. Like,
Hmm.
let's kind of, have just accountability here, and like moving forward, we just need to be a little bit more like cognizant of that, because at the end of the day, like you said, we're spending the money. So we continued on because also I believe in the moment you want to make it work, right? Like to
Hmm.
start over or go find another contractor or go like meet with other people. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
It can be, while you're still navigating the project, it can be like tiresome or hard. You're just burning money for like holding costs and stuff like that. So in the moment, we kept moving forward. The next and the biggest issue that was the most detrimental to the project was we in that area specifically. I guess I don't know if it's the same like across the nation or across everywhere, but in that area specifically, like I said, we were in a historical district. So one of the rules were, if we change over 75 of the wood in the house, it's now classified as a new build. Mind you, this home was built in 1908. So as we're doing demolition and everything, we're seeing like, I mean, there's a bunch of like wood that needs to be changed. Again, we're trusting this person that we're JVing with to understand these rules and regulations, because I mean, essentially that's why we're hiring him the project, because we don't necessarily know that, right? So we essentially changed all the wood on the house, and at this point, we got put on a stop work. We got a stop work order from the city, and they just shut us down for a little bit, and we had to have a meeting. I remember, yeah, I was definitely 25. I was turning 26 at this point, and I had to meet with the city commissioners. It was like a round table, and I was sitting at their office trying to like convince them to like let me continue my project. I'm like, hey, like I know like I messed up, like I'm trying to like do a good thing here. Um, which at the end of the day didn't work. What they were wanting me to do was, once you change over 75 wood, this is now classified as a new build. Because this is classified as a new build project, now your setbacks are different. So this house that was existing since 1908, that had lived there in its own personal space, they're now saying I have to move the outside walls inside 6 inches on one side and like 4.5 inches on the other side, right? And
Easy.
so
You
like I
just
remember,
squish it, right? There's nothing
yeah,
structural. There's nothing
yeah,
crazy about that. Just, boop. Yeah.
yeah. I remember going up there and sitting with them, and just I literally was asking them like, how do I move? How? Because at this point, I don't trust the contractor that I'm working with. He was in the meeting as well, but I don't trust what he's saying, right? So now I'm trying to take it upon myself to get these answers directly from the people who are like making these demands of me. And I'm like, hey, like, how do I, like, do I jack the house up, like one side, like logistically, how do I do this? How much is it gonna cost? And I'm like, in the meeting, like, we're gonna have to knock the house down. Like, this is gonna, I don't know what I'm gonna do. We're gonna have to start over. This is a lot. Like, I'm 26. Like, can you guys help me out? Like, you know what I mean? So essentially, they kind of, I don't want to say they necessarily worked with me, but they gave me a little bit of guidance on like how to go about the project, because they started to understand exactly the specific situation and how I was JVing with this person, and maybe this person wasn't giving me the best guidance, right? So we ended up having to move the outside of the walls inside, which was another, probably cost about $30,000. $30,000 mistake, right? And so
And
at that point,
you couldn't get like a variance or a waiver or something like that, or
yeah, so we definitely tried to go about a variance. No, we couldn't get the variance. I forget the specific reason why we couldn't get a variance. We tried so many different routes to like avoid actually uh getting it done. Essentially what they were saying, like, I was trying to understand more so the logic behind it more than like the black and white rules and regulations. But what they were saying was they're trying to give out a historical district like a certain appeal now, so they're requiring certain things. One of the things was, if one house catches on fire, this other house is too close to the other one, so we don't want the other one to burn. Which honestly didn't make too much sense to me, because it's been there since 1908. That hasn't happened yet. So, but I mean, I get it. We got it done.
You'll find that a lot as you're going through, and you throw in any overlay like a historical district, and now they get the right to impose these different regulations. But you said a great comment there that was, I was trying to figure out the why. What was the intent of that code that came out? Because many times there can be a workaround to where they say, oh, your setbacks need to be 10 feet and 25 feet and XYZ. And maybe there is a workaround. Maybe you put in fire rated walls. Maybe you do some kind of no build easement. But when you figure out why, as opposed to just here's what the code says, but if you find out the why, sometimes there can be a workaround. And to me, that's the fun part when you're like playing a chess match, a poker game, being a detective all at once. That's the fun part of entitlements and development to me. But I say fun, because I've come through the other side of many, many projects. But when you're in the heat of the moment, it is not necessary. You're not smiling about it.
No. And it doesn't always go your way.
No.
There's some times where you're just like, put your best foot forward and you do a lot of work, you spend a lot of money, and then for whatever reason, you get the planning commission voting against you, or you get some other, issue that arises that you have to address, like what you're talking about, where you had to bring in the walls. Even though it seems like an illogical type of thing, it's sometimes that's how the cards fall, and you got to make it work. So it's interesting. It's good that you were obviously able to overcome that piece. So you were able to bring the walls in, and then was there anything else? Was there anything else that kind of happened?
Yeah, so at this point, it's been 2 years and we have like a framed up house, but nothing else,
Wow.
right? So we have less house than what we started with. We've moved the walls in. If we're being honest, we technically had to move the walls twice because when the first time they moved it, it wasn't like they didn't, they were very precise. At this point, like once you, I mean, I'm sure you guys know, but once you're like under like the city's eye, like they're very like intentional, like they want to make sure they think that you're trying to skip the rule, like
Fun.
yeah, exactly. So they were super just and then throw in there that like I was younger at this point. They're like, yeah, you don't know what you're doing, so like we're gonna like critique everything that you have going. So when we did move the walls the first time, it wasn't done in a way that satisfied the city, so we had to end up moving them again, which cost us some more money. Then we had the eaves that because we had to move the walls, it started causing other issues with the already built structure. Like the eaves needed to be a certain setback, which then we had to fire rate the eaves. Like we had to cut the eaves back, then we had to fire rate the eaves. Then we kind of like had to adjust the attic space a little bit. So outside of that, that was the main thing with the city. So once we got that portion, like our framing permit done and good to go, now we go into dealing with like an actual process, right? Like meaning like contractors and getting like rough in of plumbing, rough in of electrical, scheduling things out. Now we're dealing with pulling draws from like the hard money lender because that's like a factor. Like you need to because well, I mean you guys understand, but you know, ideally you allocated $20,000 for the framing of your project, but you don't always get that $20,000. Let's say, they come out and they inspect it and they're like, yeah, we're gonna give you 15, and then we'll give you another five. I mean, essentially when we feel like it or something like that, right? You have to find a way to continually come up with that capital so we can continue pushing the project forward because if you get stuck, which I got stuck a couple of times, I mean, you're kind of just eating up more capital because I mean, you have your holding costs, right? So as far as major issues dealing with the city, that was the last one, like as far as the framing and stuff goes. But like I said, along more of the project, we started running into just more common things. I would say like making sure contractors show up on time and make sure they're finishing the work, understand like the roughing and the trim out, making sure like margins are being hit and timeframes are being hit, and dealing with the financial portion. We did have to refinance the project. We actually refinanced that project twice because we kept it so long. So that was also a headache within itself because without the money to get it done, like you're kind of stuck. Yeah.
As you get towards the end of construction, originally it had been a flip, so you were going to sell. How did the business model change? You're like, okay, at this point we've redeveloped the entire house. We're now ready to make a decision on what we do with it. How did you go through that decision process, and what was the outcome?
Yeah. So so a couple of things. The first thing that we did is we told the person that we JV'd with, we were like, yeah, this is just not gonna work out. Let's just amicably, I don't know how to say that word, but like
Amicably, yeah.
yeah, like let's just part ways, and let's just not have any type of like interactions anymore. So he's gone out of the picture. The person, my basketball coach, the person that I went into the project with originally, it's just me and him. So we're navigating the project ourselves at this point. And we definitely originally wanted to just sell it, get out of it. Obviously, I mean, now we have a bigger house in a great location, so it's worth a lot more. So there's that. We wanted to sell it and get out of it, but then also like I have the experience of like being a realtor, so like the market at this point kind of is changing.
What
And
year
like
is
I
it
said,
at this point?
we finished the project 2020, the end of 2024, so it's probably 2023 going into 2024. Let's just say it's 2024. So the market is changing. Interest rates have increased. Like the market is changing a bunch. Like things are slowing down. So like I understand that. So there's like yeah, we want to get off of it ideally and just sell it and take whatever we can and move on with our lives. But in the event that that doesn't happen, like how does that look? Like what do we do? Like I said, at this point we've already refinanced the hard money loan twice, right? We're also fighting against a balloon that's due because they're going to call the note due at the end of the year, uh, at the end of 2024, going into 2025. So the way that we went about exiting, we listed the project on the open market and, obviously hope for the best. We got a couple of offers, but the offers weren't like where we needed them to be. And we just kind of discussed turning it into a rental. I mean, it's in a great location. Like it would be the perfect short-term rental. The house looks great. I mean, we did the renovations like amazingly. The contractors did. So we talked about like having like an exit strategy of refinancing it again into a traditional loan. Well, it was a DSCR loan, but it was a 30-year loan. And then just
And
turning it into a short.
that's a big thing that's out there now. If you have short-term rentals, they now finally have a loan product that is the DSCR loan, the debt service coverage ratio, which allows you to buy an investment property that is 1 to 4 units that is meant to be a business. It's meant to be a short-term rental that you're actively running as a business. Which has been, it does come with a higher interest rate and than the 30-year fixed loans, but at the same time, for those of us running businesses with short-term rentals, it's been an awesome additional product that they've added.
Yeah, for sure. We honestly, doing that, we found a way to qualify the property off of the short-term rental data, which was super like interesting because um, we usually they go off of long-term rental data, so obviously you'll make more money if you use it for a short term, but being able to qualify off of the loan based off of the short-term data allowed us to get more money and get more out of it. Also in that process, I had to learn about private money and I had to actually raise private capital, um, which was another skill that I developed doing all that. So very, very interesting. I needed the reserve. I needed to show in order to qualify for the refinance. Really, both times, you have to show like X amount of reserves in the account, and then you have to be able to spend X amount, right? So I think it was it was like $60,000 that it needed to be. We had a portion of it. We probably had like 35 ready for them, but we needed to come up with the excess funds and I was able to sit down and really understand like how to put something together for private money to pitch to someone that is willing to um, invest into something like that. And so I understood the nuances a little bit more, and I started talking to a couple of different people who introduced me to like other people, and we were able to get the private capital and get it refinanced and get them a return on their money and their money back. So that was good.
What was your drive? Clearly, you got hit with so many things over several years. You're in your mid 20s. What kept you motivated to keep pushing through versus throwing your hands up saying, I'm taking the L, I'm walking? What kept driving you to take it to the finish line and see what the final outcome would be?
I think it developed over time. That's actually a really good question. I think it developed over time. It started out as now that I've never said this to myself before, but in the beginning, I never like failed. Like I never not got anything that I didn't want. I mean, been super. I mean, I would like to say I've been successful at like anything that I've wanted. So in the beginning, it was just kind of more so like it wasn't in my mind that like, oh, I'm doing this incorrectly or like I'm like not gonna get this done. More so towards the middle, it's like looking back at everything that's happened. I mean, we're 2 years in and like we have like less house than we started with. Like you know, maybe like want to start considering other options. Um, More towards the middle, I would say it was bigger than just me. It started turning into like, I mean, I was branding myself as this. So like people are like asking about it. People in the neighborhood have seen the project sitting there, like they see me back and forth. Like I've had meeting with the city. Now I kind of developed friends within the city who are like in my corner and like rooting for me to finish this and like meeting with me like outside of just our interactions like at that property. All of my mentors kind of knew what I was going, had going on. Also, my partner in the project, like, I mean, he put a lot of trust in me to get this done, right? So, I mean, that was super motivating. You know what I mean? Like, I couldn't, I kind of, we kind of just, it didn't go the way that we wanted originally, but like, I wouldn't just stop and just say like, yeah, this is too much for me, or I can't navigate this. But and then towards like the middle towards the end, you start kind of getting a better understanding. Like I think you made a really good point, Kristi, about like always asking why. So towards the end, like when things, number one, I learned to expect things to come up. Like it's never just gonna happen, right? And then number two, like you said, when something does come up, it's okay to kind of like if you have a baseline understanding of what's going on, it's okay to like inquire like, wow, okay, what exactly are you looking for? Like if I do this, like would this make this look better? Or like, interacting with these people and having active conversations with like contractors in the city, um, I think kind of got me in a little bit more groove towards the end. And then at a certain point, like you're able to see the light. And it's like, I mean, this house looks cool. Like I love it. Like I'm gonna keep it forever. Like I'm gonna there's so much invested, so much pride, and I don't know. At a certain point, it starts snowballing.
It's funny because that's the entrepreneurial roller coaster that they talk about, right? It's like everyone's really excited when if everything first starts, and then you start getting into it, and you're like, oh my god, the world's falling, caving in, and everything around me is falling apart, and you're like, okay, well, I gotta. At this point, there's no way but up because if I can't, if I just stay here, then I'm going to be in my misery. So you just kind of double down and keep going, and eventually you get on to the other side, and obviously you have some scars from the experience, but these are scars you take into future battles and now you're much more aware of what you need to consider as you go on, and that lesson in of itself is worth more than all the money in the world because it's going to make you 100 times more than what you probably would have lost per se on this project. So it's just the school of hard knocks, as they say. You can't
Yeah,
replace
yeah,
that. You
yeah.
can't replace that. So
Like it.
through that experience, and now you've got it up and running as an Airbnb. Is that correct?
Correct. Yeah.
Awesome. And how's that looking now? Or is it performing pretty well? Or are you
Yeah, yeah, man. It's doing a lot better than we even anticipated. I think every month we've brought in over $3,500, and we've been running since February,
wow.
right? So in our everything like PITI, including like electric and like any other overhead that we're paying, our overhead is probably 28, 29.
Mm-hmm.
So we're making some decent cash flow in it, and it's just honestly, it's just I don't care if I would have made $100. Like it's just cool to like have like this thing that I worked so hard on for 3 years, and there's so much passion and intention behind it for it to now make me a penny. Like it's like
Mm-hmm.
worth it. Like I'll hold it forever. Like, I'm not really, I have no intention to sell it. Like, but yeah. So on the back end, like now, I definitely see the value.
Yeah, and it'll pay off in the future too. It'll just continue to appreciate if you said it's in a good area. So over time, it's going to be worth it. You look back and it'll be a good experience. So through this whole time frame, obviously it's a 3-year timeline, a lot different than what you initially expected. What advice would you give to new developers that are looking to do something somewhat similar to you, or maybe taking on their own development project?
So much, man. I guess if I could give like a blanket statement, I would give a couple of pieces of advice. Number one, due diligence.
Mm-hmm.
I think being a little bit candid with myself, I wasn't ready to jump into that as in that season of my life. So I could have done a little bit more due diligence. But honestly, like I would say just if I could give a piece of advice, if you're looking to get into like the development state space, I would say if I could go back, I would make sure I just get under someone who is doing it, right? Instead of me just trying to go out there and like fumble through it, I would just attach myself to somebody who's doing it, performing at a high level, try to gain a little bit more of that experience. Once I understand what it takes to get it done, right? I can go into it and I'll probably still fumble and have to figure it out. But like having a baseline understanding of the things allows you to go into like when you have those issues pop up, you're able to ask the question why and be able to articulate or critical think. That's a big thing is like being able to critically think like through those situations and be like in like understand what's happening, right? Because originally it was like I don't understand what's happening. I'm not really sure like what's going on. So I guess the biggest thing would be attach yourself to someone who's performing at a high level in that field.
Yeah, and learn from their 10,000 hours to where, like you had said, you were trying to get that person because you were trying to avoid the death blow. Of course, you're going to take little nicks and knocks along the way, but the whole point is how do we avoid the one that takes us out? And what I really enjoyed when we initially talked was, you've gone through this whole gamut of experience. And when we think about community driven development, and now you've built relationships with different people at the city, you know how to talk to architects and engineers now. You really know that community. So from your perspective, what does community driven development mean to you, and what might you get into in the future now that you know what you know now?
Community driven development. I think being involved in that project, there was a lot of people who didn't understand everything that goes into it, right? And from the outside looking in, people, I feel like that's something like you have to deal with like when you're going through like the thick of it is like other people's like opinions or perspectives, like, am I doing this incorrectly? Everyone's trying to give you advice. So community driven development, I feel like you have to learn how to take advice from people who are doing it, have genuine intentions, and actually like can give you like advice, you know what I mean? Because a lot of people are just, I don't know, maybe like, yeah, you should give up, like cut ties, like before it gets worse, or like it doesn't look like it's gonna, but they don't understand, you know what I mean? Like there's a, that's why I said earlier, like I think the mentor would be the most important thing if I could go back. But just having like a group of people around you that have the experience and can affect what you have going on, like having someone that can walk through the project and say, yeah, no, honestly, this is your contractor's fault. They should have done this at this time, and you need to hold them accountable. That would have been super, super valuable because at a certain point, I'm like, well, is it the contractor's fault? Is it the city's fault? Like, are they not communicating? Am I not communicating? I don't really know who to hold anyone accountable. So that makes me, really, it's my issue because I'm like the leader, I'm the boss, right? So just developing like super niche people around you that can support what you have, I guess, in any facet. And I will say to comment earlier on what piece of advice would I give also throughout this process personally, like it can become a lot. I feel like I'm speaking more so to like someone who is like already ambitious and they're able to like get up and create things like an entrepreneur. It can become a lot like as an individual, and it can become a lot to like talk about, right? Because you're battling with like, damn, do I feel, am I doing this right? Like, are gonna people judge me? They're gonna call me a failure. Like, I don't really want to talk about it. I just need to figure it out, and it can become a lot mentally, but also just not like associating yourself with like the outcome. Like number one, it's okay to fail. I think anyone who has done it, anyone that I've talked to about this and performs at a high level has been like, yeah, I've gone through something similar, and like I'm happy that you went through it, and you're gonna make a lot more money because you went through it. So just not attaching yourself to the outcome, because even if worst case scenario, I went through foreclosure and I failed at this, that doesn't define me as an individual, and I can get out there and I can do it again, and the next time I'm taking that knowledge with me. So once I got that under like into my head, it was a lot easier for me to like develop that community and talk to people and get different advice and opinions and just sit down with myself and really kind of like critically think through like what's the best option, how can I navigate this? So just really having, I guess, that faith in yourself and yeah, you're different than like I guess the outcome is the point.
That's a great advice. Yeah, and oftentimes, we don't talk about it as much as we probably should, but in reality, there is that mental health piece through, any type of entrepreneurship where, you're going through the thick of it, and you're constantly having these thoughts. I mean, we were talking about a little bit offline that, I have a project that I was working on where, I had a lot of money going out and not so much money coming in for a period of time, and I was sweating bullets. And
Right.
I'm sure my wife was, kind of hearing, not, she was seeing me in this situation. I was like, oh my gosh, like maybe I bit off a little bit more than we could chew, but we were able to get through it, and now you're a little bit better for it. But again, it's not going to stop. I mean, you're going to face these challenges in entrepreneurship, especially if you're stretching, right? Because the whole premise of trying to accomplish more is you have to become a person you're not today. So that requires you to stretch yourself, and that's going to be uncomfortable. And there's going to be times where you face adversity, and that's going to weigh on your soul sometimes. And you've got to find ways to get over it, or to get through it. I should say, not get over it. You have to be able to address it and get through it. That's more so what I meant.
Yeah, yeah. And I think you said like a lot of cool things, and I think internally, like you identify sometimes. I know me at least personally, like the people. That's why I said it's super important to keep people around you that have gone through it or are going through it, because they give you perspective. Because the people around you, like I may look super successful and like, oh, you're doing a project, you're doing a flip project, or you're developing a house that looks really cool, like you're doing so well, and then on the inside, it's like, well, I can't really tell anyone because now it looks like I like am not doing well, and like I'm worried about this. And but like if you have people that, like how you just said, you've gone through something similar, they understand it. It's like, okay, well, there's kind of like a release off of my shoulders that makes me feel inadequate, or that I can't be in the room, or I can't have this discussion. Because I think that was my biggest thing. Now that we're talking about it through, I think that was like my biggest thing that I was overcoming, is because like if I'm constantly taking these like small L's, it's like, well, dang, do I know what I'm doing? Like, can I talk to the city about this? Like, I'm just not right. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And having other people around you saying like, yes, I've gone through the same things. Just continue. It's okay. You're gonna figure it out. That's super common. Don't worry about anything else.
And that's honestly the reason we started this podcast is development is long and it has so many nuances and everyone has a different twist, a different project, a different story. But the core of it, you're gonna be winning one day and the next day feeling like the world is crashing in and your deal exploded and you'll be questioning like, what am I just an imposter? Is it just me? Am I wrong? But like you said, detaching ourselves from the outcome, and really that's our ego getting in the way because no one can touch everything and always have it freaking turn to gold. I've done hundreds of development projects and there's still going to be things that come up and go, crap, now we have to problem solve. Now we get to problem solve. Now we get to find the right partners, the right solution, the right angles. And the more we can share these stories, the more people will have the courage and be willing to step into their first or their next project, knowing that you will never have a project that goes 100 smooth. If you do, please, I will take you out to a great dinner. Like, please tell me there was no hiccups at all. Cause no, it's just not the world. It's impossible. But risk and challenge, like that's why entrepreneurs and developers get out of bed in the morning. If every day were going to be the same boring day where you knew exactly how it was going to go, well, what's the fun in that?
Exactly. Yeah, for sure.
Definitely. So obviously you've come out the other side. This project has started to at least become performing. What do you view the future? Like what is your future goal? Let's talk about the next 3 to 5 years. Do you want to do something similar to what you did before, or are you trying to scale into other things?
Yeah, I'll definitely continue to. I mean, I have so much knowledge now. Like I feel like I have to, But I definitely will continue to flip. We actually just bought a creative deal out in Tampa, very cosmetic flip, but we bought it with some equity, so that was super cool. I'm gonna get into some other projects out here, so just continue to grow. I mean, ideally, I would want to scale and get into like the commercial side of things. I feel like I could have a big impact on the community. I also have thought about like joining forces like with the city, because I feel like I have a lot of insight that like I could give to make things more like a lot of context. Like I feel like they're so far removed from what's actually going on, and I feel like I bring a different perspective. I'm not like the traditional, person in that would be in the city, right? So I thought about that. Currently, I'm just kind of like I said, we bought a project out here. I do wholesaling, I do other investments, and I'm just kind of like building capital, and then I'll get into my next projects. Probably in the next like 2 months or so. We'll probably take down another one out here in Tampa, and yeah, just build out that rental portfolio out in Pensacola, get some more Airbnbs, and see if we can just get things going, get some momentum.
That's awesome, man. Well, we're excited to follow along with your journey, and I know you've already connected with Kristi. I'm looking forward to connecting you to you on social and all these other platforms and follow along with your journey. So, if people want to learn more about you and how to maybe get connected, what's the best way to do that?
Yeah, I would say Instagram is probably where I'm the most active. My
Hmm.
Instagram handle is Chris the Real Estate King. And yeah, I mean, shoot me a DM. I would love to talk about anything, any questions, give you guys some motivation, and yeah, we can figure it out.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Chris, for your time. We do appreciate it, and we're looking forward to seeing what the audience thinks of the discussion. I think there's going to be a lot of value exchange, so we're looking forward to hearing some feedback. If you guys, again, thanks again, everyone, for tuning in. If you guys like this channel, please like and subscribe. It makes a huge impact on our ability to reach a broader audience. Along with that, if you guys are listening to this in a podcast format, whether that's Spotify, Apple Podcasts, whatever it is, please leave a 5-star review. It really does help increase our reach. And obviously, we want to make sure that everyone who has insight or desire to want to become a developer has the opportunity to do so through these experiences of people that come on the show. So thanks again so much for tuning in, and we'll see you all next time.